Thank you. The motivation for this study is relatively straightforward. As you know, AI is really taking off. Its usage and kind of interferences with everyday's life is pretty obvious. So we want to use really the flexibility of the UAS in the same vein Jennifer was talking about the census household panel, and go to the field with questions about AI. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about how we gauge how individuals are exposed to AI, how they use AI, and what kind of perceptions they have about AI affecting their life. So in order to do that, we developed a longitudinal study in the UAS and fielded its first wave. The second wave is about to be fielded this month, probably in 2 weeks. So with this, we really aim to document the evolving relationship between individuals and AI. And we want to track over time awareness of AI and new developments. We want to track usage. We want to track the kind of experience the users have when they interact with AI. And of course, perceptions that people may have about AI interfering with their life. And in particular, we focus on how AI may have an adverse effect or a positive effect, that's hard to say right now, on the labor market. Given the background information that we have, can not only look at trends over time, but of course can understand if there are variations across socio-demographic groups. To the best of our knowledge, this is really the only AI-centered longitudinal study in a population representative sample, which makes this data collection particularly valuable. Now, for this presentation, I'm obviously going to use only the data from the first wave that was just concluded. As I say, the second wave is coming up in a couple of weeks. And also, I will focus on the AI application that we all hear all the time, which is large language models, particularly ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Bing Chat. We ask a very comprehensive set of questions about AI and AI-powered applications or devices. For instance, we ask about awareness and exposure to self-driving cars, or household devices like a Google Assistant or a vacuum cleaner that you can command with your voice. We ask about experience with working with robots in a factory setting. All this stuff is in the survey and it's publicly available. I'm not going to show you the results of that for the sake of brevity. So let's start with numbers. That's what I'm going to present moving on. The first metric I want to give you is awareness. So this is how aware people are of the kind of applications we are focusing on here. So we ask, are you aware of AI applications that create human-like text or code? And then we provide these examples: ChatGPT, Bard Gemini, and Bing Chat. As you can see, 2/3 of the population is aware, and almost 20% have used these kind of applications, and only 1/3 either say never heard or they don't know. Next, we look at what drives awareness. So in this case, we estimate logic models. The dependent variable is whether a person is aware or not. That includes having used, of course. And we use different demographics. I'm not going to show you the census region and rural indicators result, but they are included in the model. As you can see, there are big differences. For instance, females are less likely to be aware than males. There is a big racial difference. In particular, Blacks and Hispanics are significantly less likely than whites to be aware, but Asians are significantly more likely. There is a very steep age gradient. As you would expect, older individuals are less likely to be aware. And the gradient is even steeper when you look at SES, particularly education and income. As education increases and income level increases, also the likelihood of being aware increases significantly. the first thing that comes to mind is, of course, your awareness is going to be a function of the kind of job you have. Of course, we ask these questions to everybody, but we have occupation codes for the people who are working, so we can look at how awareness changes across different occupations. So what I'm doing here, I'm including indicators for different occupations, and then I'm predicting the probability of being aware, and then I'm plotting these probabilities in order of magnitude. So you can see the pattern that you probably expected. In occupations like, personal care and services, the probability of being aware is around 60%. But if you move to occupations like computer and math or architecture and engineer, now you're talking about probabilities of 95 or close to 100. The patterns, if we look at the drivers of usage, are very similar. So the same kind of effects can be observed. And the only thing that is kind of different is there is a less steep income gradient. And what comes out here significant is working. So people who are working are significantly more likely than those who are not working to have used these kind of applications. And again, if you want to plot the predicted probabilities by occupation, you will see then in things like building and ground cleaning or production, the probability of having used ChatGPT is close to 0. If you go to computer and math, is above 40%. Now, let's focus on users and let's look at the frequency of usage. If you take a look at everybody, you see that about 16% have used or typically use ChatGPT or similar applications once or a few times a week, and 4.5 only use it every day. But of course, you can expect a big difference by occupation. And in fact, if you take an occupation like office and administrative support, and by the way, this is pretty much in the middle of the pack in terms of prevalence of usage. So it's not one of those where nobody has used ChatGPT, but still, in an occupation like this, you see that nobody selects every day at all, and 12.5 say that they use it a few times a week. But if you look at another occupation like computer and math, now you see that 10.5% use it every day, and close to 20% use it a few times a week. What do people use AI for? So that's the next question, and this is asked to everybody. And you see that out of curiosity is the most prevalent purpose. The next one is for work tasks, and then follows entertainment, learn something new, improve communication, and so on. Now, if you use ChatGPT, how useful or harmful do you find the experience? For the most part, users find the experience useful. You see that 30% say very useful and 11% say extremely useful. On the negative side, we don't see much. Only about 10% would say very or extremely harmful. Now, what is interesting, I think, is that what drives the experience or the positive experience is the purpose with which people use this kind of application. So in this model, the dependent variable is an indicator for saying that the experience was very or extremely useful. And you see that if people use it out of curiosity, they are less likely to say that the experience was very or extremely useful. But if people go in and have a specific purpose, for instance, they use it to improve communication or for work tasks, then the probability of saying that the experience was useful increases significantly. And we ask also about trust compared to human professionals. You see that for the most part, people don't trust AI as much as a human professional or experts, although this really changes depending on the domain. If you're looking at driving a taxi cab or giving health diagnosis where the consequences of a mistake can be significant, then very few people would say that they trust AI as much or more. If you go to different things like designing a diet or exercise program, then you see that there are quite a bit more people would say that they would trust AI. And what is interesting here is that trust is driven by usage. And my interpretation is that if you use the AI, you have a better idea of its potential, and so you can better assess whether you trust it or not. Indeed, you see here that compared to those who never heard about AI, those who have heard and those who have used are significantly more likely to say that they trust AI as much or more than human professionals. So I'm going to conclude just with a slide about the labor market effect. We asked several questions about the perceptions that people have on the effect of AI on the labor market. I want to focus just on one in the interest of time, and that's the chances of losing the job to AI in the next 5 years. First of all, the sample average is 17%. If this was true, this would be a massive shock to the labor market. And the drivers of this are shown here. You see that racial and ethnic minorities are more likely to say that their job will be replaced. Older people are less likely to say so. People with more education and more income are less likely to say that their job will be replaced. People living in rural areas are less likely to say that because probably the job that they do is more difficult to be replaced. And there is no difference really in terms of whether people have used it or not. And to conclude, if you look at the same effects, but now across occupations, you see that in occupations where usage is higher, of course, there is a higher likelihood that people perceive that their job would go in 5 years and would be replaced by AI. So to conclude, this is just preliminary evidence from the first wave of this study. We are following and we are tracking these experiences and perceptions over time, and hopefully we will shed light on different effects the AI will have on the population, especially on the labor market. Thanks, and sorry for taking a bit longer.